Hi, Krishna. We're so excited to have you on today's episode and to learn more about your career journey. So, Krishna, let's start from the very beginning. How did your post-secondary experience lead you to where you are today?
I'm currently attending the Schulich School of Business and pursuing my BBA with a specialization in marketing, and I'm looking forward to entering my last year this September. It was a little bit of a different experience because I feel like for a lot of us, when we entered into university, it was during the pandemic. So first couple of years we had it virtually. I think that the most important aspect of anyone's post-secondary education experience is the connections and the people that you meet. So I'm really glad to say that Schulich is full of many talented and selfless individuals that have really helped me strive in that environment. And the alumni network has been great in terms of helping find career success and a ton of cool summer internships.
Awesome. That's great to hear. And I'm sure plenty of our listeners might be interested in pursuing a business degree at Schulich. So I'm sure that's really helpful information for them. So thank you for sharing. I'd love to pass the mic off to Raj for the next few questions now.
Hey Krishna. So my question is, Krishna, what about entrepreneurship inspired you to start your own venture? Can you give me a little bit of information on this venture and also discuss any other ventures that you've explored?
Cool. Yeah. I would say for as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to be known as an entrepreneur and someone who started something, something from in your head and then the ground up and you kind of see it flourish in real life. What inspired me to specifically start Botana was easily my parents. We are first generation immigrants, so I kind of saw them throughout my high school career working, jobs that typically aren't the best. And I seen them work really hard to make sure that we had the opportunity that they didn't growing up. And then specifically for my mom, she had a love for flower arranging and anything in the botanical space. So that's the reason that we started this up, Botana. It was Toronto's first fully customizable floral experience. We really wanted to reshape the way consumers purchase flowers. Typically, you could go to a grocery store, or even if you were to go to a more of a boutique location, there's not too much thought in that process. So we really want to make sure that each customer came in, got a 10 to 15-minute customizable experience where we talked about palettes, colors, tones, and then even aromatics. So we really want to attach a memory to each arrangement someone bought for a special occasion. And then we even transfer this over to the B2B side of the business. So we were able to work with a lot of cool and reputable brands like Tissot watches, BMW, Toronto. So we're also able to take that attention to detail and bring it to their commercial space and clients. And I have started a ton of different ventures. I feel like as any entrepreneur, you have tried something, failed, kind of gotten back up. So I think from my high school days, it would probably have been starting in the e-commerce and Amazon FBA space, moved over to some freelance photography and video editing work. But I would say Botana was the first brick and mortar business that I started and probably the most successful.
So for my next question, I would like to ask you, what would be your biggest tips to someone trying to do something similar to you, and what are some challenges you face along the way?
I would say the first thing is to remove the word perfection from your head. I think being an entrepreneur is probably one of the most fast-paced industries, and being a perfectionist is not feasible whatsoever. And that's something that I've, learned very quickly. Speed is sometimes equally as important in these industries as quality. And then I found that quality is subjective. So all three of us probably have a different array of the criteria we have on quality. So kind of being caught up on that, it takes away from pushing out the product or pushing out the progress you want and all your ideas to the world. Secondly, I'd say is be extremely comfortable with losing and failing. 9 out of 10 businesses fail when they start up. So you have to be extremely comfortable with failing every day. The term entrepreneur, I feel like you could change the job title to problem solver because that is pretty much all you do. You are just piled on with problems and problems every day. So it's just being able to manage that and understand that you probably won't make the best decision every time, but it's just taking from each of these experiences and learning. The biggest challenge I see a lot of young people in terms of when they want to start a business that I also face is funding. I think when you look and you make a plan and you decide that you want to start a business, you realize your startup and operating costs add up very, very quickly. And for a lot of us, loans are an accessible resource, especially if you can't get a cosign or a guarantor with a parent. But I found that this was probably almost like a blessing in disguise starting it young, is because this really gives you the opportunity to use your own time and your own resources because you probably won't be getting paid a salary for a long time. And you have to get used to that. So being really resourceful, being very scrappy, and learning every single aspect from, accounting to graphic design and trying to do it yourself. I think that this not only helps you become a better decision maker in your business because you understand everything from the ground up, but it also keeps you, I'd say, a little bit more grounded. So when, it does start to flourish a little bit, you know that you're the captain leading your ship, but you're not better than anyone underneath you. And you're kind of all a team working on this together. So
That's some great advice for the listeners that are listening to this podcast. For my next question, I'd like to ask you, how did Botana shape you for the future? And is there anything you would have done differently if you could do it again?
I think Botana was a great experience. I love that I was able to kind of start it with my family. So we got to spend a lot more time together. As my first brick and mortar business, it just kind of gave me the glimpse into the entrepreneurial space, and it really gave me a good idea if whether I loved it and something I want to continue or not. I really wouldn't change anything or do anything differently. I think that you learn probably about this much from all of your successes, but any of your failures you learn tenfold. So I think anyone also looking to get into the space, you really shouldn't be hung up on or looking to kind of change the past in terms of making a business, because you're going to be making mistakes through and through.
That's some great advice, Krishna. For the last question, I'd like to pass it back to Sophie.
Thank you, Raj, and thank you, Krishna, for all those amazing insights. I found them really interesting personally. So our last question for you today: do you have any advice or career tips for future entrepreneurs that might be listening to this podcast? And I'd also like to know, is there anything that you wish you had done differently in terms of your career path?
Definitely. So advice I would say is to get in the industry that you're interested in starting a business in. I know it's really exciting to start a business. I know it's something that you're very passionate about, but unfortunately, sometimes the market conditions aren't, very favorable. So I would say definitely get your foot in the door at an established Fortune 500 or even another startup. You'll be able to really get experience about seeing how the startup world is paced. These are all learnings that you can take back to your own business. I don't think you should sometimes start it right away. Do as much research as possible. And in terms of career advice, I think I'm pretty happy with the way I approached it. I would say throughout advice in terms of if you're in university and you're looking for career advice is all your summer internships, I'd really try something new each time. I would make a split between startups, large companies, different industries. I wouldn't continue throughout the same one. This is kind of your opportunity to try every single thing that you wanted to. So I would really kind of look to do that during your summers.
Definitely. That's really great insight, and I'm sure our listeners will really appreciate that. So thank you for sharing, Krishna. That was the last question that we have for you today. So thank you so much for your time being a guest on the cast. I'm sure our listeners will really benefit from all of those answers that you've given us today, and we really appreciate having you as a guest speaker today. So thank you.
No problem at all. I appreciate you guys having me as well.